I feel very much like President Pöttering when he said that it was a generous offer to be able to speak for 10 minutes. When I was in the Foreign Service, a junior minister would give me about 7, the minister half of that. But at home, my wife would give me even less. And in any case, I never had the last word. Yesterday evening, we had a fantastic dinner. And I was very pleased to meet the chairman of the Patria Institute, Trevimi Fellister. And walking to the restaurant, I couldn't help feeling that in this beautiful town, in the old center, you see what you find in most Italian cities. You see the church, St. Nicolaus, beautiful buildings, the Bürgermeister palace, and you notice that in a way we are a small world. Paul Valéry, a French poet, once described Europe as a small promontory at the extremity of the immense Asian continent. It may be small, but it has been always a very active and extraordinary little promontory, a real laboratory in a way, always ready to innovate and to meet challenges. Its history goes back a long way, and it has forged an identity which was discussed this morning in cultural and spiritual and other terms. Well, even the Institute Pro Patria uses Latin, which is a language which we love in Italy, but which is well known all over Europe, thanks to a large extent to the church. But this has brought us up to a system where we feel, as was said this morning, that we share many values, and particularly the sense that the individual has a role to play. And thanks to the role of the individual, the city has a role to play. And we are in a city here, a proud city which belonged to the Hansa League, in the same way that the Italian comuni, municipalities, created a network for trade, exchanges, cultural exchanges as well, which have created this very fantastic fabric which unites us in Europe. Now, the economy has always been very successful and has indeed proved that it was a social system made by people for the people. Now, one of the first challenges was the Industrial Revolution, because it is the Industrial Revolution which created for the first time a social question. The lot of the people who were workers, mainly workers, and who were somehow in difficult situations. Well, corrections were introduced here in Europe. We owe that very much to the Germans. The social market economy was something which was born in Germany but developed all over, and which created a system which we are proud of. It can't be compared to what happens in these new emerging countries in Asia or in Latin America. They seem to suffer more. They don't have a social mechanism as developed, which takes care so much of the different classes of people. Now, the second challenge was the Cold War. And in the Cold War, Italy had the largest communist party. You had to do something to try and lure the people away from the temptations of looking at the communist regimes as a sort of paradise. And this is why the presence of the communist regimes have somehow encouraged us to introduce correctives to the market economy, such as trade unions, negotiations between different parties, and have brought us together, I mean nations together, thanks to the Marshall Plan. Communism was finally defeated, but some problems appeared, and probably it was referring to this problem that a Russian counselor to many communist leaders, Georgy Arbatov, said in the 80s, "You will see, you Westerners, we will give you the worst thing that you can expect from an adversary. We will take the enemy away." And in fact, the enemy disappeared. And at the same time, we lost our concentration and the sort of strong cohesion among ourselves, which was necessary to face the dangers and the threats from the communist regimes, somehow weakened and disappeared. So that when the crisis arose in 2007, we were not ready to cope with a new situation, which was partly a situation similar to the Industrial Revolution, because many countries were deindustrializing. We have a different system. We have problems of energy, of new infrastructures. We do not only need transport and the traditional infrastructures, but we need the new innovative infrastructures to which Hoffman was making reference to. That is ICT, new energy sources, new level of research and teaching, and cultural infrastructures as well. And so we find ourselves today with a system in which we can certainly say that we have all these fundamental freedoms and human values, but are they as meaningful as they were before? Can I say that I enjoy a substantial freedom if I have no job, or if I am sick and I do not have the money for hospitalization or for curing myself? The utilitarians, Jeremy Bentham, that we read at school, used to say that happiness was the maximum of pleasure. But I believe that freedom is more important than just pleasure, because freedom is what allows you to expand your life. We don't live a compartmentalized life. We do many things. We belong to many groups, associations. We live in a family. We have problems all over. Well, is the maximum of pleasure that the utilitarian philosophers used to say as the product and the synonym of happiness? Or is it not freedom? Isn't really freedom the basic value that we find in the European tradition? Well, if we have to promote this, I think we have to think again. And perhaps beyond purely respecting the rules of Maastricht, this austerity regime that we are all somehow attending, perhaps this innovative spirit that Europeans have always proved to have in the past should be put at work. I must say that we find ourselves now competing with other parts of the world. New countries with population which is far larger than ours, who are growing at a speed which has no comparison with ours. But we must not give way, and we must keep a sort of leading role, because we believe that our values are important, and we should try and see that those values are also and become also the values of our neighbors or our faraway neighbors. I would like to end these few comments on a theme which I find extremely exciting. I was delighted to hear the other members of the panel this morning. Each has covered a very special field. But more than everything, I believe that it is important what is taking place today here in Tallinn. The idea that some of us coming from an area which is peripheral to Europe in the same way that Estonia may look peripheral to Europe. We come from the Mediterranean, you are in the Baltic. We still feel the same. We feel that our challenges are the same. And I was very pleased to read this morning the words of Tunne Kelam when he says on the cover of this book that developments in our partners, neighbors, and organizations have the same inevitable influence on us. What happens here has an influence on us in the Mediterranean. And what happens in the Mediterranean with all the challenges that the northern part of Africa poses has consequences also on Estonia and in the Baltic. And therefore, I would like to say that Pro Patria and the De Gasperi Foundation seem to have a common interest somehow to exchange these views. And we are very grateful to the Adenaueri Foundation and to its president for having invited us to take place to this meeting. And I would suggest that if this is just the beginning of an exchange, we would certainly be very pleased to see that this cooperation in the Baltic becomes something that we are attached to also in the Mediterranean, in the same way that we would like to see what we do there be of interest to you all. Let me say that a word of thanks to the organizers. I was delighted to come to Estonia, and I would like to say that I treasure the meetings that the Adenaueri Foundation has been organizing lately, and I find them most rewarding and most enriching. Thank you very much.